I've been writing on this in various forms recently,
Okay.
but it is the fact that the reason why people struggle with AI so much is that they, well, not AIs in general, but LLMs, is, people think AI and they think ChatGPT and they think maybe image generation, and that's everything in their head. And that's fine, because that's like the 90% use case. And they're very frustrated with it. Like, for instance, the conversation that we just had, I try to get this thing to write, and it writes like an Indian SEO writer, and it kills me, right?
Good analogy.
Well, that's what it was trained on, right?
Yeah.
It was trained on the web. And the reason why that's a problem, and the reason why you can't let an LLM just run loose and make decisions in your company, and most agents are bad, is because they can make dumb decisions. So if I let loose an agent on my customer service, they might decide that the only way to reduce customer complaints is to refund everybody, because then it'll drive it to zero, right? That's the kind of dumbass decision that an LLM could make.
It's like a machine decision. Yeah,
it's a machine decision, right? So the whole premise of what my software does and what I've been talking about is that's all probabilistic. It's because it's trying to get to a goal and probabilistic. But as business owners, we rely on things being deterministic. We rely on a machine. So what we need to do is wrap probabilistic in a deterministic wrapper. And that puts bumpers on the AIs to say, you may do this and you may do that, and you can be really good at this thing, but I'm not going to let you run amok. So as we think about how do we deploy any kind of automation in our business, an automation that is rules-based is one thing. An automation that is probabilistic-based is another thing. It needs to be treated and thought of in a very different way. So we're moving from this machine era, which is just an extension of gears and pulleys, into something which is rolling dice. And that's a very different character.
So your premise is that you want to deploy these agents within determined bounds, but then within those, let the probabilistic run loose to solve problems. And so
correct.
Basically left and right bumper, end state, but do not leave the bowling lane, please.
That's exactly
way
right.
To think about it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so an example of that would be limiting their potential outcomes to reach a certain end state, or what would be an example of just at a very, high school level of bounding an LLM in order to create, more predictable actions or whatever it is?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the most primitive way of doing it is what people have been doing already, which is they go to ChatGPT, they type in, give me an article, and it gives an article, and then I say yay or nay. Right? That's the most primitive thing. What we're really doing is we're making a judgment about whether or not this is good or bad.
Sure.
Now, we're doing it in a heuristic way. We're just kind of deciding, gut feeling, yes, no. But there's no reason why we couldn't do it in a set of objective criteria. And we can say, these are the success criteria. So then you compare the output to the something that can be measured, right? Is it actually 600 words?
Sure.
Is the Flesch Kincaid readability score actually in this range? So what are all of those things? And we can have that punch list, and it can be run against that and say yay or nay for that output, and then it can proceed to the next step in the processing before it runs amok. Because the issue is, if you get something that's probabilistic and it's like 90-something% good, but if you have multiple steps and each is 90% good, your odds of making a mistake compound significantly. So you could be like 18% chance of success after only 10 steps. That gets way out of control. So by putting these bumpers in there, which is what my software does and what I advocate people think about, is that now you are actually getting that 90-something% confidence in each step, which is like kind of like a human employee.
If I was to think about how I've worked through this currently, which is a very baby version of what you're building to automate, which is the way that I've accommodated this is I put human review before it gets out of control. So it's a staged process, which is do this, look at it. Are we within the bumpers? If no, please rewrite at the high school level. Great. Now push it back. But it's checkpointing is kind of with human being small course correcting input before it goes off in la la land and starts, funding everybody to use a wonderful example.
Yeah,
right?
and you're already ahead of 90-something% of people by doing that, because most just experiment and dick around with it and cut and paste and then abandon it. So
Yeah.
you've at least put in place processes. The next logical evolution is, how can we remove humans from that so that we can get even more leverage?
Yeah, I think it's a I think about I'm sure you have thoughts on this, but it's what I'm talking about, which is I think about the way work gets done in a company as a pyramid, and it starts at the top with the owners, then it becomes high skilled employees, then it's global talent, and then it's automation and AI. And between each of those levels are systems that are required, and your goal is to push things as far down as you can.
Right.
And so oftentimes what I find myself doing is on the road to having a global talent person use it, right on the other side of that is just a vector database and a little bit of a couple prompts. And now magically, I don't need somebody categorizing hot leads in CRM. But the interim step is a very systematized person who just looks through a straw and grades accent or whatever, right?
Correct. Yeah. And to extend your analogy, I mean, the way that I think about it, I guess I have not imaged it in a pyramid before, but if you think about that, the opportunity that this affords is that you're growing the base of the pyramid. More of your operations as a percentage are at the automation level. What this also does is it doesn't necessarily, it will over time eliminate people, but what it does is it affords the human team the opportunity to elevate themselves.
They go up.
Somebody who was just like looking at this for style, now they have an upper route and they can either level up and get better at their job, or they can go and try to find another human robot job. But it allows you to move the team towards a small SWAT team of A players. And that is like the dream team that we all want.
Yep. That is exactly how I think about it, which is it pushes everybody up. Yep. You automate the ordinary so that you can have people do the extraordinary, right? And so I think about it as clearing low stuff off of low leverage stuff, and then everybody moves up.
Correct.
But we haven't had to raise prices. We haven't had to hire more people. We've just built more leverage within the way work gets done.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because you are at the cutting edge. So you get to do that because you can do it now. When it becomes table stakes, then price compression starts to happen. But we're in this, this Goldilocks zone now, between now and then, where, and I'll get into another theme that I talk about, which is if you wait until these things are baked into tools already, then everybody has it at the same time. And that's no longer a competitive differentiator. So if you wait until copy.ai or whatever tool you're using bakes it in, now everyone has it. It's too late. Now that's table stakes. So you have to be ahead of that curve conceptually as an organization in order to really get this benefit. And there is an adoption curve, but the sooner you're ahead of that, the longer runway you have, and the further ahead you get. There'll be this compounding effect of how ahead you can get if companies really think about this now and not in 2 years.